he had to leave us, unfortunately, but he's off with Bill Maher tonight doing their final season finale episode. So they got their best guest for the last guest of the season. But he'll be back on Monday, and we'll probably get to play some of that, and it'll be great.
Okay, awesome. Well, congratulations on an amazing week, Dusty. Have a great weekend.
We're happy to end it with you. We love you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Abrams is next.
Hi, everyone. Tonight, President-elect Donald Trump's potential cabinet taking shape, potential being the key word, as opposition builds to a number of the most controversial picks, from Matt Gaetz for Attorney General to Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. We'll bring you these cabinet nominees in their own words, including Hegseth's 5 most eye-popping viral moments. Plus, my conversation with RFK Jr., I asked him straight out whether he thinks the COVID vaccine was a good thing. But first, as many on the left try to process the election loss, some have pointed to a number of scapegoats, from racism to misogyny. The argument is effectively that no matter what was said, Kamala Harris would have lost because she's a black woman. But there's another argument which is seemingly contradictory, that what was said leading up to the election did determine the outcome, and that it came from right-wing lies by podcasters and the media and Elon Musk.
And the unquantifiable in-kind donation that Musk made when he bought Twitter, one of the most important social media forums on the internet, and turned it into a pro-Trump conspiracy theory echo chamber. We have had billionaire problems in our politics for a long time, but Elon Musk has taken that problem to a level we have never seen before.
I just got a text from a member of Congress saying, you know, something else we need to look at is how people are turning to social media, podcasts, and other non-traditional sources for their news, and also news stations that aren't news. And I canvassed in all of the battlegrounds. I was shocked by the amount of misinformation voters were truly repeating back to me. Truly shocked. I do believe this is what caused the collapse of the Democrats nationwide. You cannot win when people believe lies.
But
I think that's fair, too.
But disinformation has exploded to an unprecedented degree. You talked about a grievance election, but a lot of that grievance was driven by disinformation. Starts with Fox News and conservative media.
Seems like a fantasy. Trump made inroads among a coalition of working class and minority voters, including college-educated people of color. The MSNBCs and CNNs of the world were kowtowing to the color. The MSNBCs and CNNs of the world were kowtowing to the left, covering for Biden's clear cognitive decline, and at times, they even seem to be mocking voters' concerns.
I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically, this version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
Let me maybe ask like a slightly impolite question. But, if you can afford a boat, you're not hurting so bad, right? Because a boat costs a lot of money and it's a lot of upkeep.
Listen, nobody gave me I earned everything that I've got because I want my money to go further. I want inflation to go down. I want interest rates to go back down. I want all that, but that covers everybody in the economy. Not just me, not just the poor, not just the rich.
I mean, I live in Virginia. Immigration was the #1 issue.
Yeah.
I mean, again, these could change in Virginia.
Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia.
All of this led to a pretty stunning rebuke of the left from one of the most prominent voices in progressive media, New York Times columnist and commentator Ezra Klein.
And this idea that, like, oh no, the economy is actually good or crime is actually down, this is all just Fox News. Like, shut the up with that. Like, talk to some people who live near you.
Is he right? Ask Larry Elder, former presidential candidate and co-chair of the new national PAC, Make America Just Again, and Mike Pesca, former NPR correspondent and host of The Gist, the longest-running daily news podcast. Mike, let me start with you. Do you think that this critique from Ezra Klein and others is unfair to the left?
No, I think it's spot on. I think everything that you seem to endorse and the points you seem to raise resonated with me. You know, on my show, The Gist, I played, I think, everyone, not the Alan Lichtman clip, who is, I think, discredited at this point and should have been discredited before he even predicted that Kamala Harris would win. But I played every one of those MSNBC clips, and I said, what are you doing, guys? You know, the eye is off the ball. Maybe you're appealing to your audience who just wants to hear their worldview affirmed. That's not the reason the left lost. I'm not saying there isn't misinformation and disinformation out there. I'm also saying that Fox probably definitely engages in it more than CNN does. But that's not the reason the Democrats lost. I mean, all these places you played, I guess it was Mika and Joe saying, well, these podcasters, we have to get back to regular sources of information like we in the media. They were the ones who totally blew Joe Biden's cognitive decline, a major factor in the Democrats losing.
Well, let me ask, Larry, look, you're not just a political insider, you're also a media insider, so you have a unique ability to analyze both. You know, this is from a Harris campaign advisor saying that the progressive staff didn't want Harris to go on Joe Rogan, from Democratic strategist Jennifer Palmieri. There was a backlash with some of our progressive staff that didn't want her to be on it, and how there would be a backlash. She said there was a weird dynamic about the interview as Rogan talked about it more, because all of a sudden he's on his heels about how his audience is going to react to this and the demands that they were going to put on him to be tough on her. Yeah, how much do you think a Joe Rogan interview, Larry, could have made a difference one way or the other for Kamala Harris?
You know, Dan, it's interesting to watch all this autopsy about what she could have done, what she should have done, on whose show she should have gone. Bottom line is real simple. According to a Marquette poll, 79% of likely voters feel the country is on the wrong track. She has been the co-pilot that put us on the wrong track. And when she was given a softball question to explain how she'd be different from Joe Biden, she said, nothing that comes to mind. When you walk into a store, whether you're black, whether you're brown, whether you're Asian, whether you're a Jew, whether you're Amish, you're paying 21% more for the same groceries that you paid for 3.5 years ago. When you pull up to the pump, you're paying 50% more than what you paid 3.5 years ago. And 12 million illegal aliens have been intentionally allowed into this country. That is why people felt we're on the wrong track. So I don't know what anybody could have done, anybody could have said, other than for Kamala Harris to say, I completely renounced the Biden administration. I opposed all the major decisions that he made, including the pullout of Afghanistan.
But what they have done in their online media ecosystem is build a radicalization engine, literally the way militant groups do around the world, that takes people from relatively low-level annoyances with the world. Why are eggs so expensive? Why is my kid learning this new thing in American history in school that I didn't learn? And then moves them through YouTube videos, through podcasts, moves them from that annoyance all the way, slowly, 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 to a full-blown fascist politics.
Mike, what do you make of that?
Anand is a very palatable crackpot, I find. And I find a lot of the people that I saw today, and it's not like you cherry-picked or what's sometimes called nut-picking the worst explanations. These are legion for the Democrats' demise, but they're not the best explanations. And just to rebut a point, Elon Musk did give $100 million or so in in-kind contributions, not even thinking about Twitter, but he ran the Get Out the Vote campaign, essentially. We heard that was a disaster. And, you know, there's a PAC called Future Forward, which gave something like $700 million, according to the New York Times, a left-leaning pro-Kamala Harris PAC, and Bloomberg gave $50 million, and Gates made $50 million. So of all the arguments, the outraised by a billionaire is the worst one. We have the numbers on that. Kamala Harris raised more money than Donald Trump and all the associated PACs. It can be true, you know, Dan and Larry, you know what overdetermined means. Overdetermined is when there are many reasons for a failure. And it is true, most of what Larry was saying I subscribe to too. Immigration and the connection to the Biden presidency, that's the big reasons Kamala Harris lost. Right. And then now Rogan has become the new Wisconsin, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So Wisconsin, so Rogan's become the big factor. But Larry, let me play devil's advocate for a moment. If Elon Musk had been George Soros, right, who had bought X, and done exactly what Elon Musk did on X, put aside the campaigning for a minute, the right would be going crazy and talking about election interference, et cetera. No?
Well, the right has gone crazy for a long time about ABC, NBC, CBS, NPR, PBS, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Most of the legacy media is anti-Trump. According to a media research study, 85% of the coverage of Kamala Harris when she became the presumptive nominee was positive. 93% of the coverage of Trump Vance was negative. So this is what we're... Kamala Harris when she became the presumptive nominee was positive. 93% of the coverage of Trump Vance was negative. So this is what we're dealing with. Had Elon Musk not bought X, the landscape would have been very different. That's true. But already we're fighting Hollywood, academia, media, and big tech with the exception of X. So finally, we got somebody like Elon Musk who's leveling the playing field to some degree. And I say hallelujah.
You've got Rupert Murdoch. Don't forget about him. He's, you know, kind of sort of powerful. But Mike, what do you make of the comparison there of saying, you know, now they have X and the left has had everybody else except for Rupert Murdoch up to this point?
I think we in the media, and maybe people who watch News Nation and care about this a lot to the extent that there are many Americans who won't even vote and really aren't paying attention out of self-protection. So I do think we in the media overemphasize, in general, the role of the media, overemphasize how much the Russians can affect our vote, how much Elon can affect our vote, how much, and you don't have to make the hypothetical, Future Forward, with its $700 million in billionaire spending, can affect the vote. I think the vote really comes down to fundamental things about how Americans live. And the Democrats have this really terrible, toxic brand that I wrote an article in The Atlantic is more like the HR department than people who are on your side. And I feel sorry for the media. I'm a member of the media. It's very hard not to pick out lies. Donald Trump lies a tremendous amount. So you get into this problem of just pointing out lie after lie, but you don't get to the deeper truths that many voters care about.
Let me ask you, Larry, do you agree that the media, in the end, big picture, doesn't make that much of a difference? All the media?
No, I believe the media does make a difference. If you're bombarded day after day after day by Donald Trump allegedly saying that there were good Nazis and bad Nazis on both sides when he didn't say it, if you're bombarded by people on the left saying that Donald Trump said drink bleach to combat COVID, which he didn't say. There'll be a bloodbath, which he didn't say. I'll be a dictator from day one, which he didn't say. It will affect how you feel about Donald Trump. In August of 2016, according to an article in Bloomberg, the number one reason that likely voters gave for not liking Donald Trump is that he mocked a disabled reporter. He did no such thing. So when you fill people up with a bunch of lies, it's going to affect how they think. Absolutely.
But I have to tell you, I think the backlash against the media has been one of the most powerful things for Donald Trump out there. So the idea that sort of the media coverage has just hurt Donald Trump, I think the media coverage has helped Donald Trump, because I will tell you on my radio show, when people are calling in, the people who are the right of center folks, I'm not talking about the longtime Trump supporters, I'm talking about the right of center folks, they always cite how much they were frustrated by the media coverage of Kamala Harris as one of the things that drove them nuts about this campaign. Anyway, interesting conversation. Really appreciate it. Larry Elder and Mike Pesca, good stuff. Thank you.
Got it.
Still ahead, my conversation with RFK Jr. Of course, Donald Trump's cap to be the HHS secretary. I asked him straight out, do you think the COVID vaccine was a good thing? All things considered. Plus, we hear from some of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks, the other ones, in their own words. Pete Hegseth, Kristi Noem, Matt Gaetz, all coming up.
We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them.
Former President Donald Trump will be our next president.
Americans made their choice, and they found a new home for news, News Nation.
No one has been close to News Nation because of DDHQ.
That's News Nation.
My moderate to severe Crohn's symptoms kept me out of the picture. Now I have Skyrizi.
I've got places to go and I'm feeling free. Controlling my Crohn's means everything to me. Control is everything to me.
And now I'm back in the picture. Feel significant symptom relief at 4 weeks with Skyrizi, including less abdominal pain and fewer bowel movements. Skyrizi
Dealing with. Had Elon Musk not bought X, the landscape would have been very different. That's true. But already we're fighting Hollywood, academia, media, and big tech with the exception of X. So finally we've got somebody like Elon Musk who's leveling the playing field to some degree. And I say hallelujah.
You've got Rupert Murdoch. Don't forget about him. He's, kind of, sort of powerful. But Mike, what do you make of the comparison there of saying, now they have X and the left has had everybody else except for Rupert Murdoch up to this point?
I think we in the media, and maybe people who watch News Nation and care about this a lot, to the extent that there are many Americans who won't even vote and really aren't paying attention out of self-protection. So I do think we in the media overemphasize, in general, the role of the media, overemphasize how much the Russians can affect our vote, how much Elon can affect our vote, how much, and you don't have to make the hypothetical, Future Forward with its $700 million in billionaire spending can affect the vote. I think the vote really comes down to fundamental things about how Americans live, and the Democrats have this really terrible, toxic brand that I wrote an article in The Atlantic is more like the HR department than people who are on your side. And I feel sorry for the media. I'm a member of the media. It's very hard not to pick out lies. Donald Trump lies a tremendous amount, so you get into this problem of just pointing out lie after lie, but you don't get to the deeper truths that many voters care about.
Let me ask you, Larry, do you agree that the media, in the end, big picture, doesn't make that much of a difference? All the media?
No, I believe the media does make a difference. If you're bombarded day after day after day by Donald Trump allegedly saying that there were good Nazis and bad Nazis on both sides when he didn't say it, if you're bombarded by people on the left saying that Donald Trump said drink bleach to combat COVID, which he didn't say. There'll be a bloodbath, which he didn't say. I'll be a dictator from day one, which he didn't say. It will affect how you feel about Donald Trump. In August of 2016, according to an article in Bloomberg, the number one reason that likely voters gave for not liking Donald Trump is that he mocked a disabled reporter. He did no such thing. So when you fill people up with a bunch of lies, it's going to affect how they think. Absolutely.
But I have to tell you, I think the backlash against the media has been one of the most powerful things for Donald Trump out there. So the idea that sort of the media coverage has just hurt Donald Trump, I think the media coverage has helped Donald Trump, because I will tell you on my radio show, when people are calling in, the people who are the right of center folks, I'm not talking about the longtime Trump supporters, I'm talking about the right of center folks, they always cite how much they were frustrated by the media coverage of Kamala Harris as one of the things that drove them nuts about this campaign. Anyway, interesting conversation. Really appreciate it. Larry Elder and Mike Pesca, good stuff. Thank you.
You got it.
Still ahead, my conversation with RFK Jr. Of course, Donald Trump tapped to be the HHS secretary. I asked him straight out, do you think the COVID vaccine was a good thing? All things considered. Plus, we hear from some of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks, the other ones, in their own words. Pete Hegseth, Kristi Noem, Matt Gaetz, all coming up.
We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them.
You chose to hit play on this track list today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called AutoQuote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this track at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Happy holidays, everyone! When it's holiday time in San Jose, magic is everywhere, especially downtown. Bring the whole family for our traditional free events like Christmas in the Park and Winter Wonderland. Sing along with cheer at all the shows in our beautiful historic theaters. And don't forget our renowned downtown ice for holiday ice skating. Make more memories and have a very San Jose holiday.
This holiday season, give the gift of clarity with Shade and Precision Eyewear. Superior protection, unmatched clarity. Because life's too short to compromise on quality. Visit SeeBetterPlayBetter.com and enter GIFT for 20% off the perfect present. That's SeeBetterPlayBetter.com.
Crypto Fits, crypto breaking news.
Brought to you by ReddingBitcoinCenter.com as we dive into some crypto lingo. We're still in the letter D as we go to DeFi, short for decentralized finance. Finance is traditionally centralized because it relies on trusted intermediaries. For example, if you want to send money to a friend or relative, you rely on your bank to send it to the recipient's bank. Decentralized finance, DeFi, on the other hand, requires no intermediaries. Participants can send and receive assets directly. In theory, this makes transactions faster and cheaper with DeFi, short for decentralized finance. Exciting times ahead for the world of crypto in finance.
Follow the latest in crypto and NFT news at CryptoFits.io.
This is Allie Bradley. Get my podcast, Bradley on the Border, at newsnationnow.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Despite the trend of a lower working age population, per USDA's latest Rural America at a Glance report, rural employment numbers from 2022 to 23 grew to nearly pre-pandemic numbers from 2019.
Increasing moderately 0.9% from 2022 to 2023. It was accompanied by record low unemployment rates, which were about 4% in 2023.
Tracy Farragut of the Economic Research Service says a closer look at the rural labor force over time indicates
overall, the rural labor force participation rate has been relatively flat in recent years. We have about the same amount of people in terms of percentage-wise who are participating in the labor market. But we've had increases in working age, but more so in late career and retirement age workers. For instance, the rural persons ages 55 or older were more likely to be employed or looking for employment in 2023 than those same age groups were in maybe say around 2015.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This is your Transportation Channel Minute, presented by NewSpark.io. Thanks to a $20 million federal grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation, Utah is poised to revolutionize its transit system with cutting-edge technology. Utah has been selected as one of 3 states to deploy Vehicle-to-Everything, or V2X technology. The Utah DOT believes this technology will transform driving habits similar to how seatbelts and airbags have improved safety over the years. The Federal Highway Administration echoes this sentiment, planning to broaden V2X technology. This initiative will upgrade intersections statewide with sensors directly communicating with vehicles, providing real-time data on weather, accidents, and pedestrians ahead. The aim is to give drivers early warnings to optimize traffic flow. This bold investment underscores Utah's leadership in transportation innovation, setting a precedent for states nationwide. The Transportation Channel is powered by NewSpark.io. Go to NewSpark.io to learn more about what we can do for you. For the Transportation Channel Minute, I'm John Acello.
We are going to show you some of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks in their own words. We start with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., undoubtedly a polarizing figure with many views well outside the mainstream of the vast majority of the medical community, not just on vaccines either. But his supporters point to his rational and well-thought-out positions, like on the traditional American diet or what he calls making America healthy again.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way. We've grown now to accept chronic disease conditions as normal. But now, in 2024, we're finally waking up to this cataclysm, and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did this happen? Well, a big part of it is our diet. Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that approves the poisons in our food, a few people get very, very rich, and the toxins end up in every supermarket aisle.
So a lot of what RFK Jr. has said about health and fitness has resonated. But he's also taken positions that are not supported by the vast majority of doctors and scientists who find his claims to be unsupported by science and by the vast majority of legitimate studies, especially his stance on vaccines and the COVID-19 vaccine in particular, which could be a problem if he becomes the head of the Department of Health and Human Services. I spoke with him about the COVID-19 vaccine earlier this year. Let's talk vaccines. Let's talk specifically the COVID vaccine. I know your position has been that you are not anti-vax and that you just want them to be studied more, et cetera, before being used. You've made this point repeatedly. So let me ask you this. Given everything we now know about the COVID vaccine, big picture, wasn't it still a great discovery? I mean, putting aside any vaccine mandates, I know you have concerns about the vaccine, but big picture, didn't this vaccine still save many, many lives?
Well, we don't know that. We don't know. I mean, here's what we do know, that there were more reported deaths from this vaccine over the past 3 years than all vaccines combined throughout history. So the VAERS system that's been operating since 1986, what? I
was saying, but it's also been used and tested more than any other vaccine ever in history as well, right?
It was tested more than any other vaccine that's on the current vaccine childhood schedule, because those vaccines are not safety tested prior to licensure. So it was tested, but the Pfizer tests, for example, which were published, showed that in the placebo group, in the vaccine group, there was 23% more deaths from all causes than in the vaccine group. Normally, a product like that would not have been approved. And now in just 3 years, we've seen 36,000 deaths reported from this vaccine. And the average prior to that was from all the billions of vaccines that are given, 400 deaths per year. So this had 36,000 in 3 years. Those issues have not been explained by the CDC. Right. Well, CDC has nowhere been able to explain why there were so many reported deaths associated with theirs.
Big picture. I want to come back to my original question.
Let me answer that, because let me answer that, because of course that's what and it's 36,000. Yeah. That's what CDC says. Is that CDC says, well, the VAERS program is unreliable. Well, the question you as a journalist should be asking CDC is, why don't you have a reliable program? HHS developed a surveillance system for vaccine injuries and deaths that was basically foolproof in 2010, and anybody can look this up. It's called the Lazarus study.
But here's the thing: I don't want to go too deep on each study, because again, I think that we get into the weeds. We can end up debating other studies versus this study, and you will pick certain studies that you think are more relevant.
But that's fine with me.
But I just want to ask the big picture.
You know what I would say is, let's have that debate.
All right, again, but I just want to let you. But I want to just give you one more chance on the big picture question. So you are not willing to say today that you think that the COVID vaccine, in retrospect, was a good thing for this country and for the world?
I don't think so. I mean, if you look at the countries that did the best, that had the best. No, let me just answer this, okay? Don't leave me out there on that. I'm just going to say to you that the countries that were least vaccinated, for example, Haiti had a 1.3% vaccination rate, Nigeria 1.4%. They had 1/200th of the COVID deaths that we had. Somebody needs to explain that. I'm not saying it was because of vaccination. The same is true with Japan, which is the much older population. They should have been, really laid low by COVID. They had a lower vaccination rate than other nations.